Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started today's training because it is a beautiful day out there, and I'm going out like probably 3-4 times a day to kind of keep walking around and get healthy. So a sunny day always puts me in a really good mood, and it puts me in a good mood for coming into today's training. Make sure you're engaging in the chat. I appreciate those too. It's funny, I just went over to LinkedIn and I had typed something into LinkedIn into the comments in here, and it doesn't show up for me. So I'm a little confused on where it is showing up and not showing up, but engage in the chat because this is your network. I'm going to be talking about webinars as a way to attract, federal buyers or get known out there, et cetera. But webinars are a great way to attract people into your network, which I'll talk about. But another great way to grab people into your network is to engage with those other people in the federal market who are here in my training today. So I appreciate that you're here today, and I appreciate that you're open to connecting with others who are in the training. All right, I got a huge topic. I'm going to be diving into that. This is my first time doing, I'm good at this. I do this all the time, but it's my first time teaching how I do webinars. And so I think I might have put too much into our 30-minute session, but we'll figure that out as we go forward. But it was really important for me to show you how I use webinars. I'm here right now, right? How I use webinars and how you can use webinars to attract federal buyers and teammates, right? I just say federal buyers sometimes to shorten the title, but anytime I'm saying you're doing something for federal buyers, it actually works for your teammates out there as well. So one of the main things about sales and growing our businesses is that people buy from those they know, like, and trust. This is something that if you've been in business long enough, you'll hear many of us gurus say this, right? We're like, people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And when you hear that statement, it totally makes sense, right? How can they buy from you if they don't know who you are? And so the reason I'm teaching today's training about webinars and how you can use webinars to attract federal buyers is because webinars will take people on that journey of knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. Actually, if you go into the comments on the LinkedIn post for this event today, my sister Cecilia, she's part of the GovCon world as well, and she went in there and she walked through the idea of how a webinar hits those three things in a little bit of a different angle than I did. We both have similar skills in this. I just wanted to share with you, if you're not familiar with me in this sense, or even if you are, and maybe you don't know the volume of webinars I've done, but I've done over 2,000 webinars since I've been on LinkedIn or in this world. My last business was a Microsoft SharePoint business. And from 2007 on, I was using it to attract federal buyers, and I was using it to attract candidates. We were a Microsoft SharePoint company. And so I would do webinars that were all about SharePoint expertise. For example, Microsoft SharePoint has a calendar feature. So I do a mini webinar, whether it was 5 or 15 minutes. It was like, how to use a SharePoint calendar most effectively or something like that, right? And I would do a ton of those. I would do interviews with SharePoint experts and bring them in. And that's kind of like a quasi webinar without the slides, right? We're having a discussion around the value of it. But I was able to use that to build my network of Microsoft SharePoint people, so the people I wanted to hire, as well as attract the federal buyers and teammates I would want to work with. So I've been doing webinars for a long time. Since 2018, they've all been on training how to do government contracting. And so I put there that in the last 3 years alone, I've done, since I switched over to LinkedIn, I have done over 800 webinars, right? These live events that I do are basically webinars. I'm doing slides and I'm going through a session. So they're absolutely webinars. And each one of them has a unique deck. Even if I'm teaching you how to do a capability statement or how to do a capability statement, every single time I teach, I don't go back to my slides. I just create a new set of slides based on my expertise. And the cool thing about doing that is I'm always thinking about today's way of giving you the guidance rather than yesterday's way of giving you the guidance. So anyways, I've got a lot of experience doing it, but I don't want you to think about it at my level, right? You don't need to do things daily. Frankly, you can start monthly and work your way into it. But the key is to just get started, right? If you get started, you're going to start that journey of know, like, and trust. You're going to start getting known for what you do, and you will get better at it, et cetera, as you go along. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to break up today's training into how to demonstrate your expertise. By the way, the reason I said how to demonstrate your expertise to federal buyers is because the federal government does not buy from the best. They don't. They buy from the best of those who show up. And so you either show up by knocking on their door, or you show up because they notice you're doing a webinar, for example, and they watch and they're like, oh, that company looks like they're the best, right? And so I want you to demonstrate your expertise. If people don't know you're the best at what you do, then how can they ever buy from you? I'm going to break today's training up into these 5 sections. I want to talk about the 4 types of webinars or speeches that you can give. This is just kind of a foundational piece of knowledge. And then I'm going to go into the webinar parts. And so the second thing I'm going to talk about is establishing your webinar's purpose and objective. It's a pretty quick process, but you want to establish it because it informs the next step. The next step we'll be talking about is how to brainstorm ideas, right? If this is my purpose, then here are some ideas around it. How do you get ideas for the topics? My webinar topic today is how to demonstrate your expertise. That's an idea, and that's what we're going to talk about in bullet 3 there. And then we're going to talk about actually building out the webinar things. I got the ideas. Bullet 4 talks about creating webinar outlines in 2 minutes or less. If you look behind me right here at this whiteboard, I live and breathe on my whiteboard, but the center, wherever the center is, like the center there says live. And then around it are my 5 ideas for the lives I'm doing this week, including this one, I think. There, it's hard to move my finger, but that one there is the webinar one. And then I just put 3 bullets around it, and that's that outline. You can do it really fast. You don't want to be aiming for perfection. You just want to aim for good enough to get the topic out, because your ability to talk on the bullet is where the expertise comes out. And then the last thing is how to build out your slides. And so you see that I've got a slide right here with bullets. I'll show you how to walk through picking an idea, outlining it, and then filling in the slides. And now you're ready to do the webinar. The key about this is to make sure you're going to be doing webinars around your area of expertise. You don't want to do it around mine. I'm not doing it around cybersecurity, for example. That's not my area of expertise. I know about it, but you speak about that. I'll speak about what I'm good at. So if this makes sense and this is what you're here for, put webinars rock into the chat. That wakes me up. I like it. I see it over on the right-hand side of my screen, but webinars rock. It also lets LinkedIn push it out to everybody else and like, what are you talking about? Webinars rock. I got to get over to Neil's training. It's the bomb. Hey, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am founder of Call Plan AI, which I'd love for you to go check out. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you generally, and this is what I want for you in a webinar. A to Z on how to have a repeatable, predictable webinar that your buyers can see your expertise. If you haven't done so already, follow me on LinkedIn. Join 41,000 other people in the federal market who are just tracking on what I share out there. For example, I shared a strategic plan today from the EPA, which is a really incredible plan that isn't touching just on environmental, but it also touches like professional services that we can go in and support that mission or something. But follow me on LinkedIn so you don't miss any of that content. And speaking of content, make sure you subscribe to Government Contracting Success Newsletter. This is the largest newsletter, GovCon newsletter in the federal market on LinkedIn. And so I'd love to have you join me and 26,000 other people to be tracking on the content I put out there. I put only valuable content in there that will help you with your business development and capture activities, getting you more success as you move forward in the federal market. And the last thing is bottom right-hand corner of the slide, if you're looking at it, is tomorrow's training. If you're around and you're interested, come join me. Tomorrow I'm going to be teaching you how do you find the top contract vehicles being used for what you sell and being used at the agencies of your choice. So come register for that and join me tomorrow, and I'll walk through that. Okay, I got 20 minutes. I'm doing pretty good here. And I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, actually. I got 20 minutes to walk through these 5 slides and guide you through a webinar. This is not a class on how to do webinars, right? I could easily, or course, I could easily do one of those. And, you know, if I thought it was worth it, I would. But this is the process I follow, right? And so if you write down little notes, I'm not sharing my slides. I just don't do that because I don't have the time. You can take screenshots. But if you follow the process I'm going to teach you, you will be able to do webinars starting tomorrow. The process is really straightforward. And I guarantee you, no one will judge you. Really, your first time, maybe no one even shows up. But once you start doing it, you're going to get more comfortable and more of us will be aware of you and start coming to it. Most importantly, your federal buyers. So let's start with understanding the 4 types of speeches you can give, or in this case, 4 types of webinars that you can share. The first one is informative, and this is really what we're going to use for the most part in the federal market. This is what I'm going to encourage you to use. But informative talks, right? These are ones where you teach people things. Literally, what I'm doing today is a webinar that is an informative webinar. It's teaching you how to do webinars, right? And you can do the same thing. Second one is persuasive. This is where I'm trying to make a case. So if you think about, some of the talks out there where we're trying to push the direction in politics, or we're trying to, convince people. Let's say we want a new football stadium in our city. We have to persuade the citizens, the community, to pay for that thing. And so that's a persuasive type talk. You're not educating them really, and you're trying to convince them of something. Then there's entertaining. This is humorous talks. This is where you're making them smile. That's my way of describing it. And then the last one is inspirational, or that one you can kind of think of like Tony Robbins type speeches or something, fire up, motivational. I love that. That's where I would love to go at some point, is be motivational. But inspirational or special occasion type stuff. So if you're going to an event, you're going to, be a keynote speaker where there's not a lot of meat behind it. It's just out there. But I describe it as to celebrate. These are the 4. The one you want to pay attention to is informative talks. Your webinars should be informative. Actually, let me back up for 1 second. The reason it should be informative is because you're trying to demonstrate your expertise. And so your intended audience is the federal buyer and your teammates. Your federal buyer is looking to learn from you. And if they are not talking to you, and they don't even know you yet, then they can come to your webinar or watch a replay or something, and they can learn what you're trying to teach them. And we'll talk about different topics, but you're the expert at what you do. You need to know what that expertise is. Hopefully you're actually putting that expertise in just to even introduce yourself to other people. I'm looking at Nina Martin there from Graham Inc. She could put in American Sign Language, right? That's an area of their expertise. Well, now that's given you a foundational area to inform on, or do that informative or educational talks, and then she can break into it. And I'll go into that more. Okay, once you understand the idea that you're going to be doing informative talks, you need to understand what's your purpose and what's your objective. And I'll come back to objective in a second. The purpose, the reason you want a purpose for why you're doing something is because it's going to drive your ideas going forward on what type of webinars are there. It'll drive all of your efforts. And so I gave you an example here of a purpose. My purpose right now is to get the entire government market, federal market, to sit there and say, Neil is teaching us. It's not even Neil's teaching us, right? My purpose of my talks is that everybody believes, truly understands that government contracting is just a process. You know how I say government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. If I shorten that down, what I'm trying to get people to understand is that government contracting is just a process. So if you're not having the success you want, then there's something wrong with the process. Either you don't know it, or you're not quite delivering quite the right way on the process. But the process, when done correctly, will lead you to wherever you want to go. And so that's my purpose of my webinars and these lives. I come back constantly. Previously, my last company, it was a SharePoint-based company. So my purpose was to sit there and say, we're the SharePoint experts. I wanted everybody to look in and say, they're the SharePoint experts. I wanted candidates or people who were considering working for us to go, wow, this is not just a company that has SharePoint person. This is a SharePoint company, and I can find a home with a bunch of other SharePoint people just like me. I wanted my buyers to sit there and look at us and go, this is not just a company that happens to do SharePoint. This is a company that only does SharePoint. They are the best of the best, right? And so that kind of thing. I'm encouraging you to look at yours and say, your one thing is your purpose. We're the SharePoint experts. We're the American Sign Language experts. What is your one thing? Actually, take a second. Don't just treat this. I mean, of course, if you're walking or something, it's a little harder. But if you're by your computer, type into the comments or chat right now, what's your one thing? We're the something experts. We're the staffing experts. We're the cybersecurity. You might tweak it down to say we're risk management framework. We're the nuts and bolts expert. I don't know if Elizabeth is in here today, but she does the nuts and bolts that the government would buy. What's your one thing? If you know that, then it helps you drive the other stuff going forward, especially the next slide. I talked about purpose and objectives. So purpose is kind of this whole level. I'm trying to inform people that government contracting is a process, that I'm an expert in SharePoint. But I also have an objective of what I'm doing. I will state very candidly, my objective is to build my network and to continue to grow it. I believe that if I have a strong network, I can do anything that I would like to do. One of the things that is my most favorite thing to do is to make introductions. Somebody come over here and I see you're connected with Jane. Can you make an introduction? Yep. There you go. And the bigger I have as a network, it also gives me influence over the government. The government looks in and says, wow, this guy Neil has such a big network in the federal market, especially small business government contractors. Maybe we engage with him to get information out. And that happens. The SBA, DOD, and others, they come to me and say, hey, can we get stuff out? I'm like, thank you for giving me content that I can share, right? And there's no money engagement there, but that's the value to me, is that I continue to grow my network. What is your objective, right? Think about it to yourself. And you don't have to put that in, because this one, it might take a little bit more time. But I put an example is, one of your objectives, if you want to do something similar to mine, is I want to get known as cybersecurity expert, and I want to start building my network. So as I share more content, LinkedIn is letting people know. Well, I put CTA, that's call to action. I might do a webinar, and the objective of my webinar is to get people to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And one way I could do that is I could do this webinar with slides and then say, hey, put in the chat, and don't do this for me, put in the chat, put slides in the comments. So put the word slides in the comment and connect with me. That's what I would say to somebody perhaps. And so here they're putting slides in there, which is engaging my content, and then they're connecting with me. You have to think about what your objective is, but that's a pretty good baseline objective, is you just want to grow your network so you have more and more people aware of the fact that you are the expert at the one thing that you're putting in. There's wellness expert. There's document accessibility remediation. I love that. That's a newer one for me, right? And that works well right below ASL and other 508 stuff. But that's the thing, right? If you know that one thing, then you're going to be able to move forward. Okay, so I got 12 minutes left. Let's talk about brainstorming webinar ideas. So the important thing is that you got your one, you know what your one thing is. What do we sell? What am I trying to communicate? Don't do two. I guarantee you, if you do two, you will be known for nothing. I have people who have been coming to my trainings for years, and I don't know what they do because they write big paragraphs or they don't do something. The reason I can say Nina does American Sign Language is because I heard it over and over again. The reason, and I don't mean that in a bad way, Elizabeth, the reason I can say that is fasteners, right? It's I know she's doing that. Wellness expert, Doretta, I was talking about that yesterday. Because it's just wellness experts, that'll start sinking in. You want to keep it limited so that you can be known. You can sell a bunch of things, but when you're trying to get known for one thing out there, stick to it, and stick to it for 6 to 12 months minimum. All right, so when you're thinking about ideas, and I'm going to go over and demonstrate this in a second, you just need to understand brainstorming, like I do back here. It's just ideas. Don't judge yourself. Don't think anything's right or wrong. Don't even discuss it. Just write it down and move on. I've written numerous things down. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So brainstorming is just letting your mind free flow with the ideas. I put here, let the ideas flow rather than aim for perfection. And what I mean there also is don't rewrite anything. Just write it and come back later. But I wanted to give you an example. It's funny, some of the meetings I have are so much, but I got this notepad that I'm using when I'm in meetings. But yesterday I was in a meeting with a friend and somebody who's in Call Plan AI with me, Brett, and he was talking. And as I'm listening, I kept getting these ideas. But an example is when I wrote like 10 ideas talking to him that were all webinar related type ideas around what I do. But one of them was top 10 must-have skills, for example. And I'm like, oh, it's like dribbling in basketball, right? I'm not trying to do fancy three-pointer stuff. In basketball, the basics are what I wanted to teach with that idea. And so I go, dribbling, shoot from the free throw, do a layup, these basic things that are out there. So you want to let these ideas roll in. So let's go ahead and practice a little. And this is not overly formal. I'm just moving into my notepad, and imagine my notepad is basically my my whiteboard. So let me just make sure that's sharing there. So I just want to throw ideas out, and so let's just use staffing as an example, for one moment, right? If I'm looking at staffing, and so let's say staffing is the idea. I just start trying to come up with topics that are out there. And there's a lot of social media standard on this that you can learn in more detail. But top 3 reasons to outsource recruiting, right? I got an idea on that. And when I see things like this, I might switch around and just get ideas from where they're at. How internal and external recruiting teams work together. Something like that. If I knew my topic, it'd be better, right? But so I'm doing one that's not really mine. I might choose one on money, right? I'm trying to engage people, how to reduce, and I'm just using recruiting kind of constantly, but how to reduce recruiting costs by 50%. And I'm just picking a number, 50%, right? I don't know what that is. So you start going through these topics, right? And I only got 8 minutes, so I'm going to come back. But if you were doing staffing or you're thinking about your one thing, you should be able to walk right through 10 topics. If I was going back and demoing to you my, what I do, government contracting, et cetera, I would go through 1,000 topics in a second. How to do business with HHS, how to do business with DHS. And then I would go, well, there's 400 agencies. There's 400 topics I can do. I might do sales, right? How to have a first meeting, how to have a second meeting. So I can rattle off a lot of ideas when it's my expertise. You need to think to yourself, what's my expertise? What's that one thing? And then what I want you to do, and take this as an action item coming out of today's meeting, just turn around on a piece of paper and write down 10 ideas. Because all you're looking for is one that you will then deliver as a webinar. Later, you can come back and explore the other 9. But write down 10 ideas and try to think to yourself, which one of those seems the easiest? Like, I know the best. Okay, so we've got that. We've got our ideas. Hopefully, you thought of a couple that are in there. Oh, before I move on and tell you how to break down the webinar preparation, I wanted to thank Voltron and Mac, the CEO over there, Mac Liu, for being sponsors of our LinkedIn Lives and our YouTube Live training that we do every day. I really appreciate it. They're an AI proposal writing firm out there that helps you write more winning federal proposals with their purpose-built AI. I really like it because it helps you go from solicitation to a clear, compelling, compliant draft that you can be reviewing in minutes, not weeks. And that's a big deal for any of us who, write proposals, been doing this a long time. So it's super exciting. Thank you to Voltron. Do me a favor, throw thanks to Voltron in the chat and show them a little love there. And I will show you love by showing the next slide. Okay, so you've got your ideas. Those ideas, by the way, are the title of your webinar. You can refine it a little bit, but basically those are your titles, right? I use top 3 reasons to outsource recruiting as an example. Now what you need to do is to break down your outline of your slide. The first thing that's really important to keep in mind, and I can't remember if I said it on the next slide, but basically you only want 3 bullets whenever you give a speech or a webinar or anything. I'm going to talk to you about this, this, and this. Forget about the fact that I just had 3 to 5 slides, but generally you want 3 main bullet points you're getting across. What are the 3 reasons for outsourced staffing, right? That kind of thing. But when you're building your outline, and all an outline is basically the title of a slide. In a speech or somewhere else, it's a little different. But here the outline is, what are my 3 slides? And you can have 3 to 5 slides as long as you stick to the 3 points. But sometimes I have a point that, I can use 2 slides to expand a little bit. But I like using the who, what, when, where, and how to be able to plan my outline. And I'm going to go back and show you in a second here. But I'm looking at those 5 W's and an H and saying, well, how can I teach what I want to teach with those? I told you I've done 800 plus in the last 3 years. I used to have that up somewhere on the top of my board. It just said who, what, when, where, why, and how. And the other thing it said is transformation. That's more advanced. But it was because I was just trying to remind myself, don't get creative here. I'm just trying to say the basics of the lesson. So let's go ahead and look at my notes again. Where am I? Uh-oh. Got lost. Hold on. It's first time using a computer. Come on. There we go. I think I have too much open on my computer. I have just a massive amount of stuff. I think you can see my whiteboard. I want to go into it. But if I go into the top 3 reasons of outsourcing, and I think about those 5 W's, I might start with, what is, staffing or outsourced recruiting. So now I've got my what, and if and I might not have the time to get all the way through this, but if I have the what, then I can explain to them, hey, and by the way, keep in mind, I'm trying to inform my potential buyers. This is not a generic presentation. I'm trying to inform my buyers, and so here I might say, what is that? What is staffing? It gives me a chance to educate them, because sometimes my buyers don't really know what they're talking about. Now, in your case, you might not be selling something as straightforward as staffing. You might just be informing on what is cybersecurity, or what are the options for elevators, the type of elevators or whatever. So I'm using what is staffing, and then I like why. Why is staffing? Wow, why is staffing? For now, I'll just leave better. But why is not better? Because better is a controversial thing. So why is staffing a great option? For government contractors. Let's say I'm trying to do staffing for other government contractors, right? So there's another good title to a slide, and then I can go in and put some elements in there. And then the last one I'll choose, because remember 3. So who, what, when, why, where, and how. And so I might sit there and say, when is the right time to engage, a staffing firm. And I know companies like Graham and others who do staffing, they would refine this, but that's my outline. That's my 3 outlines. Sometimes we get crazy with a ton of slides. I have done so many, like 800 plus in the last 3 years, that for the most part, the slide deck has 3 slides that are the meat of what we're doing. And so just really quickly, I just came up with that. And let me come back to my last slide here. This last slide is how do you build, and I'm not going to be able to show you because I always end on time, but how do you build out the slides? So I did, when's the best time? Well, I would be putting 3 to 5 bullets in there. 3 to 5 bullets under when's the right time to be working with a staffing firm, right? Why is staffing a great option? I'm going to put in like 5 bullets that say, this is why. And I'm kind of trying to educate my customer, right? And so I'm giving them very legitimate reasons that align to some of the challenges they might have. And so because I do so many webinars and my audience is kind of used to it, I don't use images, but you see all this white space? You could put an image into that white space on the average slide that aligns to what you're talking about. So anyway, when you're building that out, just think in increments of 3 to 5. If you begin with the 5 W's and the H though, that gives you the foundation to the slide. By the way, if you want to reach out and go, hey, here's my outline, what do you think? Or here's some slides, just message me and I'm happy to talk to you about it because I'm running out of time here pretty fast. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training about a webinar. The first thing is think about what you're good at and choose 10 titles or ideas that are possible webinar ideas, right? They don't have to be overly crazy. Your audience, your target user wants basic information, not really crazy advanced information. They are looking for, what is this? What are the top 3? So once you have those ideas, pick the best one and then outline using the 5 W's and the 1 H. When you do that, you'll be 50% through your planning for a webinar. And then the last thing is put those bullets in, right? What I'm suggesting here is be good, not great, or be good, not perfect. None of us are going to be perfect with our webinars. I feel myself bounce around a little bit on today's. That's fine. I'm giving a basic outline. You can take it where you're going. And if I wanted to, I could come back and say, hey, here's a more refined one later on. What you want to do, though, is start getting out there and making yourself visible to your buyers by sharing your expertise. When you do that, you're going to start getting known. All right, I'm out of time. I'm just going to end up. I hope I see you in tomorrow's training. Remember, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.